Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Claire Marie Coy, and I'm the Student Engagement Programs Manager in Engineering Student Services. And you're here for the Rockin Your Internship workshop. And this is for you whether you have an internship or research experience this summer, or if you don't and you're just interested in learning what it takes to have a successful internship or research experience. I just want to note that this session will be recorded. We're not going to record any of your faces or anything like that. It'll just be the presenters and the PowerPoint. And also, all of you will be entered into a gift card raffle. So keep an eye out for an email following the event. So I'll go on to introducing our speakers for today. So we have the Director of Student Programs, Marvin Lopez, who has extensive background and experience in industry and actually recruiting students for internships. And we also have the Prep and T-Prep Director, Tiffany Reardon, who has extensive experience with running research programs and getting students into paid research opportunities. So definitely feel free to ask lots of questions. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Marvin.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming. Delighted that you've taken the time to be with us this afternoon. I assume, or let's go on a limb here, I assume that if you're here, it's because you're done with finals. So congratulations if you are, and if you're not done with finals, more power to you that you're taking the time from your busy schedule to be here with us this afternoon. So yes, this is Rocking Your Internship, and our intention here is to give you some tips on how to rock your internship. And as Claire mentioned, this is not just about literally an internship in a company. This is about whatever you'll be doing this summer, whether it's an internship, a startup gig, research, your own project, to be honest. If you're working on your own, this will help you succeed. But whatever you're doing this summer, this will help you. And so we hope that we'll cover quite a bit of material. We do want it to be interactive, so it's, we do have a lot of material to show, but please ask questions as we go. I know you've submitted a number of questions already, so feel free to ask questions as we go. And by looking at the names, I see a lot of students that I know from our prep world, so welcome back. And those that I don't know, welcome as well. I'm Director of Student Programs, Marvin Lopez, at Engineering Student Services, and as Claire mentioned, I've been in the recruiting world for many, many years before I came to Cal. So original engineer, who went on to recruiting, managed and ran the global university programs at a bunch of companies previous to being here. So I've been around the block in terms of recruiting and hiring amazing students like you. So I thought I'd share what I know about a successful summer. So and with me is Tiffany Reardon. Tiffany.
Hi, good afternoon. It's great to be here today. I'm Tiffany Reardon. I know some of you from Prep and T-Prep, and others I have not yet met, but I'm very excited to meet you in fall. I've run a number of research programs. I actually have a blog dedicated to getting students connected to research. And so we're really excited to talk to you today about your summer program.
Okay, and Claire, what is the best way to ask questions? Is it simply to raise your hand and you'll monitor hands, or should we put them in the chat? What do you prefer? What do you recommend?
I think putting them in the chat would be helpful, but they can also raise their hands and I can monitor that if that's easier.
Awesome. Yeah, okay, that works great. So then we can focus on sharing and you focus on monitoring. So, all right, let's take it away. So why are we here today? We are here today because so many of you are going to all these amazing places. As you can see, everything from small companies to large companies, some well-known, some less well-known. I'm delighted to see PG&E's there. I used to be there for many, many years and went on to other great jobs and ended up here. Coinbase, Amazon, you see it, it's there. And of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So, but we are here because you're going to these places and we want you to make sure that you have what it takes to succeed at all these companies, not just today, but in the future. So that is why we're here. So today we are going to talk a little bit about the purpose of internships, a quick word about offers, what success competencies for a successful summer internship or a successful engagement, the difference between in-person versus virtual, and what we'll basically share is how is it different, if it is, between in-person and virtual. And we know that many of you will likely be in virtual settings, some will be in a hybrid setting, and a few I think will be in person, but it sounds like mostly will be at least in a hybrid setting, if not outright virtual. So hopefully comes fall, If you're doing research, it'll be in person, and of course, next summer will be in person as well. We'll talk about other factors that make internships successful. We'll talk about when and why interns fail. And I've got stories to tell you about that. But despite all the great tips that we can give you, sometimes interns still fail. So we want to preclude that and give you some thoughts about that, some general tips, and open it to Q&A. But of course, as I said, please feel free to bring questions along the way. Okay, so I always like to put it out there why or how what will make this this workshop successful, and why we commit to you that if you walk away more knowledgeable about what it takes to have a successful internship and more confident about your successful internship, your internship experience, this workshop will be successful. So we'll ask you at the end if we've achieved our goal. And if we haven't, don't worry, we'll give you your money back. You're perfectly covered, not a problem. So let's launch into our slides. So first of all, the purpose of an internship. What is the purpose of an internship? So we're going to launch a poll to see what you think. So here we go. What do you think is the purpose of an internship? So we'll give you a few seconds to answer this poll. Okay, we got 60%, 63%, 70%. A few more to go, and we'll close it out. A few more to go, and we'll close it. Okay, I think that's good enough. All right. So there you go. So share results. I'll share the results. So according to your answers, 100% of you thought that it's to gain and apply skills. 57% is to get a return offer. 71 for networking. 64 to contribute. 54 to get recommendation. And 64% is for having fun. And so the answer, these are all the things that, the answer is all of them. So that is correct. The answer is to do all these things. So an internship and a research experience and working with a nonprofit or working at a volunteer even is all of these. It is to get a return offer, either for the following summer or more likely for full-time, for the immediate, for coming back full-time the following year. For those of you that are about to graduate. More and more companies are leveraging internships, and I'm sure you know that. Many of you know that companies are leveraging internships to bring you back full-time. So they're critical for that return offer. For gaining and applying skills, absolutely. This is the real world experience. This is the knowledge that you don't get in the classroom. To network, meaning to build the people you know that will serve you for connections, for introductions, for recommendations. To contribute, so you do want to leave a legacy at this company, wherever you may be, at the legacy, at the lab, at the company, at the lab. You do want to leave a legacy. You want to be the one that years from now they say, oh yeah, our intern built that. And it's really cool when you come back and you see the work that you left being used still. And that happens a lot. So you want to make sure that you do contribute and add value to the company and to the organization, wherever you may be. A recommendation, this is really important. And this, for those of you that are on LinkedIn, this is the time when you ask of your peers, your manager, for recommendations on your LinkedIn profile. Not just a letter, but an actual recommendation on LinkedIn, because recruiters do look at those for the future. And of course, have fun. You do want to have fun, even if it's online. And great companies have done a great job making the virtual experience enjoyable despite the remoteness. And as things progress and we start coming out of hibernation here, they might actually have you in person, or there may be future events in person. So, but above all, have fun. So you're right. It takes all of these. All right. So a quick word about job offers. First of all, they are either two types, either full-time after graduation. So they'll likely give you a full-time offer, often before the end of the summer. So before the end of your internship, they may be talking to you, or probably will be talking to you, about a full-time offer to come back when you graduate. So if you're graduating let's say next May of 2022, they'll be talking about a full-time offer now for fall or summer of 2022. or they could give you an internship to come back next year, right? An offer, sorry, to return next year, either, again, to the lab or to the company. You should know this up front, or at least as close to the beginning of the summer as possible. So even your offer might even say that, but at the least when you start having conversations with your manager and the people around you, HR, simply, ask, is this, will this internship translate to an offer for the future? So you should know that. And consequently, you should know, what will it take to get that offer? What is the performance criteria that will lead to this offer? If you deliver X, if there's criteria that you'll be measured on, what does that look like for you to know what to aim for? And if it's not for an offer, they don't do that, right? Some companies also don't do that. It's okay. It doesn't mean you can just slack off and disregard it. You should still do well, and you'll still be reviewed, but make sure that you know whether this will lead to an offer or not. And also know about deadlines. And this is a tricky conversation, but companies will really push you, and especially the bigger companies, to accept the offer as soon as you leave, and maybe even sometimes before you leave for next year, whether it's for internship or full-time. So be mindful of the deadlines that we have in the college for this. Research is not as direct, and of course, to come back in the lab, it's a little looser. It could be that you come back as a graduate student, so it's a little different. In the corporate world, the deadlines are very fixed, but we do have some guidelines, and this is where the tricky part. These are guidelines that we ask companies to follow in recruiting you, and that basically we ask companies to give you till November 1st of this coming fall to decide on an internship offer or full-time offer for next year. However, and this is it's not that link you see there at the bottom. However, this is a guideline, so we can't make companies do this, and this is where it gets tricky to enforce it. It's not enforceable. Ultimately, it's a guideline that we ask companies. So, ideally, they should at least give you 2 or 3 weeks after the end of the summer to decide. That's professional courtesy, is 2 to 3 weeks. If you find yourself getting, 2 days, even a week, let us know, and we'll try to work with them. I'm perfectly happy having a conversation with the company about the process, because while they do want you, they should still be professional on their end and treating you like a professional, giving you the professional courtesy that is common in recruiting. So, but ultimately, it's a guideline that we have. We can't enforce it. So, I'll pause that because I know there's questions about this topic, or there's been questions before. Questions?
No questions are coming through so far.
Okay. And I know Tiffany, there were previous questions about the offer, the questions of ideal offers prior to for registration. Is that correct?
Yes. So we had a number of students asking how they should, talk about job offers, whether it be upfront, if they have a lunch, like how do they broach that subject?
Typically, you should ask early on when you should have a meeting with your manager early on to set your expectations, set your goals. And so that's one opportunity where you can ask if these goals would lead, and this process would lead to an offer. So that's the first time you should bring it up. The other place you can bring it up is somewhere during the summer. Sometime during the summer, you should have a check-in with your manager, a performance evaluation check-in. So somewhere, 4 or 5 weeks into the summer, where you'll evaluate where you're at, how things are going. And that's another time when you can bring up the question of, will this lead to a full-time offer? And if it does, what does it take? What is the criteria again that will lead to a full-time offer? As always, ask you may get, don't ask you won't get. So be direct, be candid, that you're curious, right? You just want to know if this internship, this experience will lead to can lead to an offer or not. And they will tell you yes, no, maybe, and this is what it takes. And just be upfront with them, knowing that most companies are looking to do that, right? To bring back interns full time. Any other questions?
I would just add, if you're not doing an internship, but if you're doing a research program, it is possible to continue that in the fall. So if you're interested in doing that remotely, you should ask about that and let them know. If you know that you are eager to do that in the fall, just kind of put that out there.
And for that matter, corporate internships are also sometimes carried over into the semester. Especially those that can't be, since you'll be doing now, we know that we can all operate remotely. Sometimes companies are interested in keeping you on remotely to work as an intern. So what I would say about that is be careful, right? It's a great vote of confidence in you. It's a great, great validation of your value. But at the same time, once you come back to the fall, back to school, your focus should be school. And companies, are only more than happy to have you work with them, even in the fall. But be mindful of that. So, weigh out the benefits and the cost in terms of time and energy on your side. So, all right, so let's carry on. So making your internship a success. These are the things that we think, and from our experience, having been in the industry for many, many years, make internships successful. Resourceful, and then we'll cover these in detail and tell you a little bit about how you demonstrate these competencies both in person and online. And you'll see that there's not a whole lot of difference. But first of all, resourcefulness. Remember that you are not being hired as an expert, right? That is not what interns are. You're being hired to find answers and to provide insights and ask questions. So they want you to find the answer, not to have the answer. So you want to be resourceful, meaning that you need to find where the answer might be, whether it's in your head or in your team or your neighbor or somewhere, but finding the answer and finding solutions is what they're hiring you for, being resourceful. Taking initiative is critical. So do not sit, and I've come across many interns that wait for things to come to them, wait for projects to come to them, wait for support to come to them, wait for challenges to come to them. Do not wait. Don't think that every company has their act exactly together and know exactly what they'll do and what you'll do day in, day out. Make sure you take the initiative to look for things that interest you and to get the support that you need and the interactions that you need from your peers and your managers and your bosses. So take the initiative. Have the courage. So as I said, companies are bringing you in for your insights, your expertise, your curiosity. So have the courage to speak up. That is the worst thing an intern can do is sit in the corner and not ask questions, not participate, not volunteer, and wait for things to come. So have the courage to speak out, ask questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question. The only dumb question is, as you all know, that I always say, is the one you don't ask. So have the courage to participate, ask questions. You're being brought in as an equal. Take that role as an equal. Professionalism, and this takes all forms, and we'll talk about that. But this is all about your presence, your image, how you come across on camera, in person, all of that. And then, of course, communication. You could be an expert, you could be fantastic, but if your communication isn't there, if you're not clear, you're not succinct, you're not professional in how you communicate, it could be a complete derailer. And so we'll get into what that looks like. But these are the 5 things that make a really successful internship: is being resourceful, taking the initiative, having courage, being professional, and communicating. So with that, we'll take them one at a time. But first, the big secret. There is no difference between virtual and in person. There's always this perception of, well, if you're in person, it's very different than virtual. It's really not. It's the exact same behaviors that we'll talk about in a minute in terms of being, again, resourceful, taking the initiative, being courageous, being professional. These behaviors are only demonstrated differently, right? The way you come across and how you demonstrate these things on camera and Zoom, on the phone, is different than if you're in person, but the exact same things are important. The exact same behaviors, the exact same competencies are critical. So there's really no difference between virtual and in person, except that you're on camera versus a desk and some office. So any questions about that before I carry on? Or Tiffany, anything to add on that note?
No, I think that as we kind of go through our tips, you'll see that they're exactly the same, virtual or in person, or some of you I know are doing hybrid. So you have that.
Okay. So first up is professionalism / communication. We kind of combine these two because they flow into the other. So am I doing this one, Tiffany, or you want to do this one?
I'll do this one. So
okay.
So professionalism. So we have a list of tips that we suggest. The important thing to note is that what you want to convey that you are interested, even though you might be super excited and very, very excited about the experience. If you don't act like you're interested, if you don't act enthusiastic, this will come across. So you want to demonstrate your interest. You want to show that you have a positive attitude. You also want to show that you have the aptitude. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is you want to show that you're going into this with a clear set of intentions, whether those intentions are getting a return offer, whether those intentions are getting a letter, if it's a research program for, getting a letter for grad school, whatever it is, that you have a good attitude, and that you're someone that they will feel like, wow, like we're really excited that we, accepted this person in our program. So how do you do that? So whether it's in person or virtual, you want to make sure that you dress appropriately. It depends on the job, but work appropriate attire. So for example, if you are in a virtual setting, I know it might be tempted, you're in your room, maybe you're kind of casual. Don't dress, like you just rolled out of bed. Even if you did just roll out of bed, make sure that you look professional. So, your hair's combed, you're showered daily, you're, fresh and ready to go. And if it's in person, it'll depend on the job, but you want to definitely have appropriate work attire. If you're working in the lab, there might be some lab protocol, or, depending, you'll kind of get a sense for that on your first day, but make sure that you look presentable and professional. Make a good first impression. Always introduce yourself to everyone. Make a good impression, practice your elevator pitch in person, and also you can do your elevator pitch over the phone. Very, very important. And I've seen a lot of students not do this. So if you have a name that perhaps has a non-traditional spelling or is pronounced a bit differently than it's spelled, if someone mispronounces your name, just correct them at the beginning. There's nothing more embarrassing than somebody, saying your name incorrectly for weeks at a time and you not saying anything, because what'll happen? Everyone will say your name incorrectly. So if you have a name that's, non-traditionally spelled or whatever, make sure that you correct them. You can just do it in a nice way. Email etiquette and clear communication. Very, very important. I know sometimes we use shortcuts and we, text, OMG, LOL, TBH, right? No text speak. Clear communication and email etiquette. A lot of managers will want to verify that you have received an email. So what you might want to do is, if you email, you can just simply respond with thank you so much, or, great, I'll get on that, or, whatever. But responding tells them that you got the email. If you don't respond, they're not going to know. And some managers, and I don't know if Marvin, you've been like this, but some managers, like, they want you to respond to every email. It depends. It varies. If you don't understand,
Yeah, to that point, Tiffany, the other thing I would say about the email etiquette: do not communicate with your manager, your mentors, your peers, your professional peers at a company like you do with your peers on campus. So there's very different style of communication. No hey dude, no hi. Be respectful. If they tell you that it's perfectly okay to be casual, and once you get in the vibe of the culture, you see that it's a more casual culture, then it's okay. But don't assume that you can treat them and address them like you would your peers, because they're not your peers. These are professionals. So and you are coming in as a professional, so embrace that role.
Absolutely. And I think it's always better to err on the side of more formal. Definitely if you're doing an REU, and your PI, you might want to start, calling them doctor or whatever. And then they might say, oh, just call me, Susan or whatever their name is, right? But let them tell you and make that determination. So always better to be more on the formal side. You also might want to have a nice greeting at the bottom. That's always nice as well. If you don't understand jargon, ask. There's a lot of acronyms out there, and you are not expected to know what all those acronyms are. There's a lot of jargon that's specific to that lab, that's specific to that industry. And if you don't know what it is, No one's going to frown on you if you don't know. Just ask. Just say, you know, I'm not familiar with that term. Can you explain what you mean by that? A clean workspace and a clean lab space. Now, if you are in person, you know, you don't want to have a desk that's, you know, that essentially looks like my desk when we're back on campus, right? And those of you that have seen my desk are probably laughing, but it does. You don't want a Tiffany desk. You want a nice, clean workspace if you're in person. Now, if you are virtual, you want a designated workspace, preferably using a Zoom background if needed. Now, what do I mean by that? A designated workspace. This would be somewhere where you have privacy and that is minimal distractions, right? So designate that workspace that you're going to use during your internship, and make sure that you let friends, family, roommates, whatever know that you are working. You are busy, you are working, and you are not available. In meetings, speak up. Don't talk on your cell phone. Don't text. Don't slouch in your chair and look at your phone. When you do that, it shows that you are not interested, and it is not you know, going to look favorably on you. In Zoom, it is not a college lecture, right? So again, I know a lot of students, you know, might have gotten into the habit of turning their cameras off. No, your camera needs to be on. You need to have your camera on, and please be sure that you put your name on your Zoom. Sometimes I know we use different things, maybe using an iPad, maybe using a different computer, and it might say, you know, Marvin's iPad, right? No, you want to make sure that it has your name. You may also want to put your preferred gender pronoun, that's customary, but make sure it has your name, and make sure that you are actively engaged. Because again, if you don't have your camera on, if you're not sitting upright, that sends a very strong message that you are not interested, and you don't want that to come across. Next slide.
Okay. Ultimately, treat the summer internship as a summer-long interview, because that's really what it is. An internship is really a summer-long interview. Everything you do, every action you take is being scrutinized, and it's being, you know, and it's being remembered, and it's being talked about. So be remembered for the right reason, for doing the right things, for being curious and asking and being professional, not for the wrong reason. We'll talk about what the wrong reason looks like, but treat that as a summer-long interview, because ultimately it is what it is. So, okay.
Okay, so resourcefulness. So find resources to solve problems. You are all engineers, and you know, someone gives you an equation and someone tells you, hey, you know, solve this problem. You think, sure. Approach this in that same way, right? Approach this as one of those problems that you need to solve. So how do you do that? So do your research on the company and the lab before your first day. And similarly, if it's in person, if virtual, what you don't want to do is you don't want to say, oh, I did that, right? Although that might be true, it's not going to look good if you don't, you know what the company does. Maybe, for example, you're getting a job at, I don't know, Texas Instruments, right? So you're at TI and you're saying, oh, we do more than calculators? No, of course, right? They might actually say, oh, this person obviously didn't do their homework. So do research. In fact, if you do the research, people are going to know, and they're going to be very, very impressed that you've done that research even before you've started the first day. If you're doing research in the summer, you better believe that you're going to have to do research before the first day, because chances are, if you're doing research this summer, I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of weeks you get sent some journal articles to start reading. So definitely do that. Talk to other people that have interned there and meet other interns. So if you have LinkedIn and if you have connections that have interned there, talk to those people, kind of get a sense of what to expect. Talk to the other interns. Very, very important that you talk to the other interns, meet the other interns, and you can do that, you know, whether it's in person, maybe invite them to lunch, or if it's via Zoom, you know, reach out to them. Go to units and introduce yourself. Email other units, introduce yourself. Org chart is your friend. So if you want to kind of understand the different organization, you know, structures that exist and what they look like, that's really important. You want to network. don't be afraid to ask questions. So we have a question in the sign up form. And the question I think is a very, very good and important question. How do I overcome the mental battle of being a person of color in maybe a predominantly white male space, or maybe, you know, a person that, you know, maybe you're a female student and you're, you know, predominantly male, whatever. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There's something called the imposter syndrome. Those of you that have experienced imposter syndrome, maybe you're familiar with it. Maybe if you're a first generation college student, guess what? When you get your first position in industry, and I can speak from firsthand experience, and I think Marvin has shared that he has also, you know, throughout his career suffered from imposter syndrome. Guess what? They hired you for this position. You have every single right to be in this position. You should not, I know it's easier said than done, but never once for a moment think they made a mistake in hiring you. Absolutely not. They want you there. So do not be afraid to ask questions, and do not be afraid to talk to people. There will be people. Now, maybe these people are not your formal mentors, because sometimes what happens, you'll actually get a formal mentor. Maybe that person you don't really, you know, click with, but you might meet someone else that you really, really feel comfortable talking with, and somebody that you really, you know, connect with that person and talk to that person. And again, even if it's not a formal mentoring role, I can guarantee you that that person can be a very valuable person there. Think positive. Don't think if it's not if it can be done, it's how it can be done, right? Remember, there's no just, there's only, there's no hopefully, and there's no if when it comes to the summer programs.
The other thing I would add to that, Tiffany, and it's a great question. If you are the only one of whatever it may be, you're the only person of color in the room in a meeting, if you're only the only woman and the person of color and the only woman in the meeting, if you're the only Berkeley student in a meeting, there's a reason why you're there, and there's value that you bring, the experience that you bring that they want, and they want to hear from you because of that experience, because of your because of the uniqueness that you bring. And so while you may be the only one, whatever, in that room, it is precisely because you're the only one in that room that has the same experience that you, that looks like you, that has value to that organization. So leverage that, leverage your experience, the fact that you may, you know, the lived experience you bring has value to this company, which, you know, which is manifested in the questions you bring, the perspectives you share, and the insights you bring, and they want to hear them. So, you know, it takes a little courage, but there's a reason why you're there. There's that value that you bring, that perspective that others may not have, that they want to hear from you. So share, and, you know, have the courage to get involved and ask and share your thoughts. Similarly, there's companies, and in particular large companies, have what they call employee associations, employee resource groups of employees of different communities, of various communities. So there's groups for women, groups for employees of color, African American, Asian, Latino, LGBT, you name it, veterans. So seek those out and join them, because then you'll find community there, you'll find support, and you'll find role models that you can work with and learn from. And, you know, that's one of the reasons how I moved on from engineering to recruiting and diversity, by being involved in the employee resource groups at PG&E way back in the day, and actually became president of one of them for a while, because I found that was the community that I found, you know, rewarding and supportive. So seek those out and get involved. But above all, embrace the role that you've been brought in to do, and have the courage to share the insight that you bring and the experience that you bring, because it's exactly the value that you bring and why you belong there. So, okay. Initiative. So in addition to having the resourcefulness to solve a problem, you also want to have the initiative to solve problems without being asked. This to me is a critical competency that I always look at, you know, back when I had interns, to me was critical to find it, you know, that the interns that I hired solved problems without being asked. So what does that look like? In person, you know, and through the casual network, you find opportunities for getting engaged in other projects. So if you're, if you're in person, or when you're in person, you have meetings, you're in the kitchen, you're in the hall, and you find out from what other people are doing, and you learn from what things are out there. In virtual world, it's a little different, but find, the organizational chart, the chart that describes who does what, where do they belong, who they report to, and what they do, and reach out to them to have a virtual coffee, to have a chat and learn about what they do. And if it's interesting to you, spend time with them. And if there's a project that appeals to you, volunteer to support, to help. In project or team meetings, speak up, right? If you're in a room with your project team, speak up. Same exact thing in a Zoom call with the same project team, speak up. If it's something that interests you, if you hear of an opportunity that a problem needs to be solved, a problem has risen, jump in and say, hey, I'll take a crack at solving that. You'll be appreciated, not necessarily for solving the problem, even if you don't, but for taking the risk, taking the chance to solve it, and volunteering. With your manager and mentor meetings, same thing, whether they're in person or on Zoom, ask, what is your manager working on? What project is your manager aware of that you can work on? What is your mentor, who may not be from the same department, working on? And what do they know? What projects are out there that could be of interest to you if what you're doing may not be as exciting? As interns, you'll likely be invited to lunch and learns and tech talks from other departments, other groups. Same thing on Zoom, whether they're in person or Zoom. That's a great opportunity to find out what else is going out there in the company, in your neighborhood, as it were, and what kind of projects do they are out there that you can take a part in. If you're curious about what somebody does, visit their office. And this is the part that's a little different and is challenging without being in person. That in a normal environment, if you're curious about what somebody does, you literally walk down their office and you say hello and you introduce yourself and you get connected. In Zoom, in the Zoom world, it's a little different, but you can always reach out and schedule a meeting, a quick 15-20-minute meeting. As interns, you will see that people love chatting with you. They love interns, because that's why they bring you in. That's why they have an intern program. People love to meet interns and to get the energy that you bring. So they'll be more than likely to say, more than happy to schedule a meeting and share about what they do and hear from you about what interests you and where you could contribute and where you could partner. So don't be afraid to take the initiative to jump on things that are of interest to you. But on the opposite side, do not wait until things come to you. Solve problems without being asked, and take a crack at solving problems without being asked. If you don't solve it, it's fine. If you take the chance, is what counts. Not just sitting there waiting is what you don't want to do.
Can I add, as we're always telling you to go to office hours. Think of it like office hours. It's the same concept.
We also have a question in the chat about how lunchtime works in the virtual setting, or how you can make the most of that hour that you do have.
In terms of the mechanics of lunch, you'll have a pretty busy schedule, I would imagine, of meetings in the morning, meetings in the afternoon, and probably, and what companies have been doing lately, is protecting what they call your lunch hours. So between 12 and 2, 12 and 1, you're not supposed to have meetings, right? It's supposed to be time for you. However, as an intern, you don't want to really have the time to just not do anything. So it's an opportunity to reach out to folks and schedule time to get to meet them, and not have a formal meeting, but have a casual chat, a virtual lunch, to invite to get to know what they do, to share what you care about, and see where there might be an opportunity for you to do some job shadowing or work on a project that they might be interested in. But generally, the lunch hour is set aside, the 12 to 1, 12 to 2, for you to take care of yourself and your own needs. So.
Thanks, Marvin.
Okay. Courage. This is critical. This is another critical thing. Now, something I want to point out and none of these conversations we've had have anything to do with technical skills, right? I've not said anything about technical. This is purely about the competencies that you as individuals and you as professionals need to demonstrate, that are not really about technical, about coding or engineering. This is about really fundamentals of you being able to work with others. So courage is absolutely critical. Taking risks, which means that you try and fail. So failing is okay. And it's something that is a little different than what you're used to in school, where if you fail, as you all know, it's not a good thing. In professional world, and in particular in the lab, in research, trying and failing is expected, and it's good to fail. I know there's companies that have failure Fridays where people come and share the failures they've had. Literally the things that they've tried and have gone wrong. It didn't go well. Because from failure, you learn, and others come and share their perspective, and next thing you know, you turn a failure into a success. So do not have the courage to take risks. Again, try solving problems that you don't know anything about, volunteering for projects that you know nothing about, and learn as you go. So what does that look like? In person, asking tough questions, right? The reason why you're brought in is for your curiosity, right? Your fresh perspective, your fresh set of eyes. So ask the tough questions. In virtual, same exact thing. Ask tough questions. Why does this done here? Why do you do it this way? Have you thought of this other way? Have you looked at this approach? That's what they want to hear from you. Speak up in meetings. In in-person setting, you'll be in a conference room and some sort of setting where you can speak up. In virtual, same thing. Granted, it takes a little more courage. I'll be transparent that it does take a little more courage to speak up in a Zoom setting, but once you're comfortable with that, that environment, and it's no different than this, speak up. In person, if you're in a meeting in person, sit at the table, not at the, if you're been in a conference room, there's the chairs at the table and there's the rows at the wall. If at all possible, sit at the table with everyone else. Don't assume that because you're an intern, you belong in the back. If you're not in person and you're in a Zoom meeting, turn on your camera. Never, ever, ever turn off your camera in a Zoom meeting if you're in a professional setting. Yes, there's all kinds of challenges with, or they may have challenges around Wi-Fi and all that, but turn on your camera because it shows that, to Tiffany's point, you're curious, you're committed, you're engaged in this meeting. If you're in person, arrange coffee with top leadership. Skip levels. It's something that is not common in academia, but is very common in corporate, meaning a meeting with your boss's boss. And so and very often as an intern, that'll be arranged for you, but maybe not. So be comfortable asking to meet your boss's boss, or even their boss, like 2 levels up, because they want to hear from you. You'd be amazed. You think, oh my God, you're going to meet the VP or the director. It's okay, because it shows you're engaged, you're committed, you've taken the initiative. So if they don't arrange it for you, you go out of your way to arrange it, and ask your boss, ask HR, your mentor, just email them directly, but arrange a meeting with those above, the higher ups that want to hear from you. They want to hear your perspective. Ask for tough projects, right? Sometimes companies assume that you may not know much, or assume that you're more comfortable with something easy. They just may not be ready for you and not have anything ready for you to work on right away. And if you find a project that's tough, that's interesting, that you haven't done before, ask. Ask, can I work on that? Ask, can I spend 20% of my time on that project? Can I spend my Fridays with Mary on whatever she's working on? If it's something that interests you, go for it. And fail, please. If there's one thing you want to do this summer, is fail, but learn from the failure. So don't just fail and let it be. Learn from the failure, apply it to the next pass, iterate, but fail, because if you're not failing, you're not trying. And if you're not trying, it means you're not taking risks. So companies want you to fail, the labs want you to fail, everybody wants you to fail, because failure leads to success. So Claire?
Thanks, Marvin. So we have a question about arranging these coffee chats. When in your internship is it the best time to arrange these? At the beginning, in the middle? Does it not matter? And is it better
anytime,
email or in person?
I would say early, as soon as possible. Remember, you have 10 weeks, maybe 12 weeks if you're lucky. Time goes really quickly. You'd be amazed how quickly time goes. So the earlier you do it, the better. So as soon as you get comfortable with who's who, and you know who your manager is, you know who your mentor is, start networking, start getting out there, because people are very busy. Even if it's summer, they'll be very busy. Your schedule will be very busy. So the earlier you do it, the better, to put those on the calendar, early on. Especially the higher level the individuals, the harder it'll be to get on their calendar. So don't wait. Do it as soon as possible.
Thank you, Marvin.
Okay. Other questions? I see questions. Okay, let's carry on. And I believe, all right, so we've been talking a lot, so let's take a puzzle pause before we get carried away with more stuff. So I have a puzzle for you, a little, yeah, I guess a puzzle. So we'll just post the puzzle and see what you think. Okay, if you line up all the counting numbers as below, an amazing coincidence appears. What is the coincidence? And that's these are numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, 12, all the way to 25. What is the amazing coincidence that appears in this sequence? And I'll give you 30 seconds. Anyone, raise your hand. It repeats itself with 11, no. 11, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, no. Pattern of triples, no. 2021, no.
Counting.
Robert?
He's counting. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.
Right, so that's only counting numbers, but what's interesting about the sequence? What's there's an amazing coincidence in the sequence. Going once. Weeping, yes. That is correct. Pi to 4 decimal places shows up in the middle of the sequence. How crazy is that? All right. Okay. So a little muscle exercise there. So a little brain exercise. So let's carry on. So additional competencies that you should be mindful of to demonstrate in your internship. These are again, and if you notice, they're not technical. These are purely things that behaviors that you should demonstrate in the work that you do. First of all, enthusiasm. Companies do not want to see interns that just sit in their cubes and don't talk to anybody, that don't seem to care about what they're doing, or that don't turn on their cameras, don't ask questions. So be enthusiastic. This is the greatest thing you've ever done. And you want to portray that as you spend the summer with people, whether it's remotely or virtual. I mean, whether in person or virtually. And remember that virtually you have to really project that, right? It's not the same as in person. So be overly demonstrative of your enthusiasm for what you're doing. Collaboration. Always, always, always work with others. Do not ever sit in your cube or just work at home and only work by yourself. Because what they want to see is that not only you have the technical abilities to do it, to solve problems, that you work with others to solve problems. So collaborating is critical. I've had many interns in my time who were fantastic, brilliant engineers who didn't work with others, who literally sat in their cubes working by themselves. And that does not help. I don't want to hire somebody that can't work with others, that doesn't like working with others. I need interns that want to work with others and can work with others. Be curious. The one thing that, among the many things that companies want is for you to be curious, ask questions about what they do. Ask questions about how things could be better. Perspectives that you bring and ideas that you bring about things that could be done differently, better, cheaper, faster. And innovation, kind of along the same lines. Bring up ideas of how things could be done differently. That's the whole point of having you as interns with a fresh perspective is come up with new ways of doing things. So don't assume that because you have an idea that's kind of wacky, they don't want to hear it. It's precisely because it's wacky, they'll want to hear. So, Claire?
So we have a question in the chat. How does working with others work in a virtual setting if you're the sole intern within your department?
Yeah, so that's a tricky question, right? Because if you're the only intern, and very likely within your small department, you will be the only intern. So make sure you establish relationships and you establish channels of communication with your peers. So you'll likely have a manager. You'll likely have a mentor within that manager, so somebody that isn't supervising you, but really working with you. And then you have your peers that you work with. So make sure you have interactions with all of them, that you get to know them individually, or at least as many of them as you go through the summer in a virtual setting, that you have, sort of the Zoom thing like this individually, so that you get to know them and they get to know you, to build that rapport that is so hard to do, that is so easy to do in person, that is so hard to do virtually. But take the courage, take the initiative to reach out individually to the folks that are near you and around you, organizationally, so you can build that rapport and build those connections. So even if you're the only intern in that department.
Thanks, Marvin. And we have one other question that's going back to a statement before that says, what do you mean when you say it's not common to meet with top leaders in academia? Is it uncommon to ask for the meeting or uncommon to get one?
It's uncommon to ask. So, academia is very hierarchical, as you know, right? There's your PI, and then there's the dean, and things are very hierarchical. And you typically don't get that. It's not common to meet with faculty and above. And then just a bit of transparency. When I started here, having come from industry, I requested meetings with my boss's boss, and that was met with some a bit of an eye-opening, because it's unusual to do that, and now we do it more regularly. So it's not that it's not done and and people aren't open to it. Is that it's commonly not asked. But if you ask, you will get. So like anything else, as I always say, ask you may get, don't ask you won't get. Does that help?
Thanks, Marvin. Yes.
Okay. So be enthusiastic, collaborate with others, whether it's other interns, other professionals. Remember, don't think of yourselves as I'm the intern and that you're somehow less than everybody else. You're simply there for a short period of time. That's it. Otherwise, you're an engineer. You're an engineer that is at this company, in this lab, for a short period of time, is as capable as everybody else to contribute and add value and ask questions. So be enthusiastic, collaborate, be curious about people, what they do, what work is going on, and offer new ideas and new approaches. Okay, some additional tips. Preferably do not take classes, especially if it's a corporate internship. You're expected to be there 40, 50 hours a week. So, it is a commitment of time. So ideally, don't take classes. Only do one internship. We have been asked in the past that, can I do 2 internships, especially since we're remote? It's not realistic that you can really manage 2 internships, even remotely. Ultimately, it's about energy. And so can you really spend your energy in 2 places? And invariably, and hopefully none of you are doing that, but invariably, some critical meeting will be scheduled for these 2 internships at the exact same time. And then what do you do? So don't take classes, only one internship. Post on LinkedIn the things you're doing, right? The before, during, and after the internship. But something I would offer you and encourage you to do is not just boast of, hey, look at me, what a cool internship I got, but talk about what you learned from it, how what you did to get it, what advice you had for others. So teach while you share. Meet with your manager or mentor once or twice a week. So this is probably be scheduled, but not necessarily. So make sure you have, that when you'll be meeting with your manager and your mentor at least once a week. Ask for all the necessary technology. So especially in this climate, make sure you have a laptop, make sure you have a hotspot, make sure they give you headphones. And again, if you don't have them, ask. They may not have thought of that. They may think that, we all have 1 gig speed, one gigabit speed, Wi-Fi, which we all don't. So make sure you have what you need to succeed. Over communicate, especially in a virtual world. It's easy to turn off once you're done with a Zoom meeting to not think of you. Remember, they don't know you. So as an intern, they don't have you at the top of their mind right now. So make sure you over communicate. So when things come up, they do think of you. That part is very critical, because you're coming into an environment where everybody knows each other, right? You're an established organization, and now you're coming in brand new. So over communicate so that I don't forget about you. Join virtual intern groups and events. I know for a fact that one of our interns last year was not brought back as an intern because they did not join the intern meetings and events. For whatever reason, the student chose not to participate, and he was not brought back purely for that. So don't do that. If you're invited to all the events as it is, with all the other interns, join them. As Tiffany mentioned, have your designated workspace. So wherever it might be, make sure that is your regular workspace. We talked about this. Do research about the company. No Cal time, right? You're not at Cal anymore. When you're at this company, wherever it might be, you're at that company. So Cal time does not apply. We've actually had companies tell us that to please stop this Cal time thing, because now after they hire so many Cal alums, Cal time is becoming a thing at their companies and they don't like it. So do not go on Cal time. If the meeting starts at 2, they mean 2, not 2:10, not 1:55.
Even if they are on Cal time, don't be on Cal time.
That's right. Take breaks. If you're virtual, it's and you've been through virtual learning, so you know how that goes. But get up and get some fresh air, walk around, but come back. So don't take a break and just stay out. And this is critical. Let your family and your roommates and everybody else around you know that when you're online is because you're working, you're busy, you're committed, you're engaged. Do not come behind you and make funny faces, pull you away from what you're doing, et cetera, et cetera. It is not like the semester that you're you're in a professional setting. You and those around you should support you in that process. So.
Thank you, Marvin. So we have a question in the chat. It says, are virtual research programs on a set time, like a 9 to 5 during the week, or are you expected to work the 40 hours a week throughout the week and every day? And then there's a follow-up question to that as well.
So it really depends on your PI, the principal investigator, what they want. So some programs are super structured. Other programs are not structured. So it really depends. But in addition to the research, chances are the program will have activities. So they might have lunch and learns where you hear talks about grad school. They might have a GRE prep course. Those are very common. They might have lectures that you can go to. Just a rule of thumb, anything that is called optional is not optional, right? So if they say, oh, this is an optional lecture, it's not optional. Go to the lecture. So it just really depends.
And to that note, that's something I want to point out about the notion of a 9 to 5, 40-hour week in corporate. Let me just be honest, does not exist, right? So don't think that you're only working from 9 to 5 and when your 40 hours are up, that's it, you're done. In the corporate world and industry, you're done when your job is done, when the work you're doing is done. That's it. So whatever projects you're on, if it takes more than 40 hours, it takes more than 40 hours. By the same token, if you're, if things are kind of, but things do ebb and flow. So don't think that every single week you'll be working 50, 60 hours. So that's not the case either. So things will ebb and flow, and some days will be slower, other days will be, busier. But don't think that, oh, I'm only here for 40 hours. I'm only here from 9 to 5, and that's it. That does not look good if you come in with that mindset rather than I'm here to contribute, to learn and add value, however long that takes. So.
And we have one more question. So how do internship programs that are based in different time zones work in general? Are there any differences?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And this will be, this is great practice for the future, because the reality is that companies are global, and the companies you're joining will be global. And so your internship may not be from 8 to 5. You may be online literally at midnight, or at 6 in the morning, or at 6 in the afternoon. And so you have to be flexible, right? You have to go with the flow. That if the internship, if you're needed at a meeting, at a gathering, at an event, at what we'd consider odd hours, that's just the way it is. So it's likely that in a global environment, you will be meeting, or you're having gatherings with, it could be that your boss may not be physically where you're at, or anywhere near where you're at. Your boss could be across the country or across the globe, and that's okay. And so you just have to flow with it, right? Just go with the flow. But it's great practice for the future, because your full-time jobs when you graduate will have this, will be in settings like this. When I was at AMD, we had meetings, we had one of my teams was in India. And so we had meetings literally at 2 in the morning, because that's 2 in the afternoon in India. And that's just how it is, right? We alternated. And so sometimes it was 2 in the morning for them, other times it was 2 in the morning for us. And we made it work. But flexibility is the key. And understanding that, yes, the time is much more fluid now in a global setting.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, so I know we're running a little low on time here, but despite all this, despite all the tips, interns sometimes fail. So let's just be honest about that. Not you, right? But others sometimes fail. Why? So there's a few things that that happen here that can happen. Above all, unprofessional behavior. So what does that look like? It's sending, using company property for the wrong reason. Since you're virtual, that there's less chance of that. But the proverbial, at least the stories that I can tell you about, interns that avail themselves to the supply room very generously before they came back to the fall. That avail themselves to all the supplies in the kitchen. Those kind of things that may seem small, but people pay attention to. But more egregious than that is unprofessional behavior that that entails using company equipment for inappropriate uses, sending jokes, cartoons, memes, any of that inappropriate language, bullying, all that kind of stalking, all that kind of stuff that companies do pay attention. And nothing will get human resources and your boss on you than behavior that can be construed as sexual harassment, harassment in general, bullying. They will be on you in 2 seconds and you will not come back. So do not engage in any activity that is remotely inappropriate. Jokes, memes, etc. You're not on campus. Kind of along the same lines, if you don't get along with others, if you're known as the intern that doesn't get along with others, doesn't like to work with others, doesn't it doesn't work with others, that's a death knell. Under communicate. I mentioned this earlier. If no one knows what you're doing, if no one knows what you're up to, no one knows who you are. If you came and went the summer and nobody knows you were there because you didn't communicate, that is bad. So that is a fatal error. If you do not deliver, now, again, I remember I mentioned that you can fail and that's okay. But in the end, you want to deliver the things that you're committed to. So, as Tiffany always says, under commit, over deliver. So make sure the things that you commit to deliver, you can commit. So don't commit to things you can't deliver for the sake of sounding, knowledgeable. Commit to the things you can deliver and deliver. And the last one is really, really important, is to never ask questions. If you just sit there in a meeting and meeting after meeting and event after event and you never ask questions, that is also fatal, because it shows that you're not engaged, that you're not interested, you're not curious, and that you're not interested in learning, especially in growing. So I've had many interns who were nice, who were friendly, who were smart, who were super smart, but never asked questions. And I couldn't bring them back. I literally could not bring them back, because to me, the lack of questions meant that they didn't care. And that may not be the case. It might have been that they were shy. It might have been that, they were comfortable with asking questions, but it goes back to courage, right? Have the courage to ask questions, because not doing it sends the wrong message. And these 5 things could be the, fatal in your experience. And yes, as Tiffany says, do not be the complainer. And it's less likely to see this in a virtual world, but in person, there's a tendency for people to congregate at the proverbial water cooler and complain, right? And complain about all the bad things, all the bad the experience you're having. Do not get into that mode, in person or otherwise. Always have a positive attitude. As unfortunate as your experience might be, for no experience is always positive, but do not focus on the bad and do not share the bad. Keep it positive and be enthusiastic at all times, because people remember those that complain. Questions? Other thoughts, Tiffany?
I just want to add, maybe at the end of this experience, maybe you find you don't like it, right? Maybe you do research and you're like, this is driving me crazy. Like, I don't like this uncertainty, right? Maybe you're like, research is not for me. Maybe you're like, this job is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. That is not a failure. In fact, that is a good thing, because guess what? You found what you don't like. And I think that you can learn something from every single experience, right? Even if maybe they give you a great return offer and you're like, this isn't really what I want to do. Don't think of it as a failure. Think of it as, you have this experience and you've gotten something out of this experience.
Okay, some resources from the Career Center, from USA Today, How to Impress Your Boss, from Handshake. There's our own Handshake here on campus. Email etiquette. This is really, really important in treating and thinking about emails differently than you would in a campus setting. And rufinder.com has the Maximizing Your Summer Internship Experience blog specific to the summer research world. So make sure you take advantage of those. Additional questions, and I know we're running low on time here.
No other questions have come through so far.
I see Isaac has his hand.
Hey, I have a question for Tiffany. Would you mind posting a link to your blog in the chat?
Of course, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Okay, so we said that this workshop would be successful if you walked away more knowledgeable, more confident, and with actionable tips. So let's see if we did our job. So let me bring up the second poll, and feel free to answer the question about the workshop. It's 78% so far. 81%. All right. So I would dare say that this workshop has been successful given the responses. So I think we'll end the poll there. As you can see, 100% of you said yes. So awesome. Glad that we were able to fulfill our promise. And I see a couple of questions. And Isaac, did you have another question?
No, I think I just lowered my hand. I left it raised. My bad.
Okay, cool. No problem. I see a question from Ashley about if you return an offer, but you're interested in interviewing other companies. That's exactly why, Ashley, we have this guideline of asking companies and expecting from companies that they give you till November 1st, precisely for that reason, so that you have the opportunity to engage with other companies that you may be interested in exploring, and why we're very adamant about asking companies that they follow that guideline. But again, it's a guideline. It's largely unenforceable. So the challenge is working with them to negotiate some timing that works for you and also for them, since they do they do want you. But we do have the guideline, and we expect them to follow it. So point them to the website and let them know that this is what we expect of them. So Isaac.
Hey, I do have another question this time. So I currently work with a supervisor who is very, very nice, but sometimes I feel like I'm not getting like any negative feedback, or I'm not getting any feedback for improvement because they're so nice. Is there a way that you would recommend approaching a supervisor about, like, hey, maybe you could talk about some of the things that I could improve, or like emphasizing that a little bit more in a nice way with the supervisor?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question, because that is a challenge sometimes, that supervisors don't want to be too quote unquote mean on on interns, right? They're your students, they know that you have challenges, so they don't want to be too mean, right? They want to be not quote unquote nice. So they won't give you like really actionable feedback to to improve or to address. So try to make the conversation more structured, and you can say do up the couple of things you can do, the plus delta approach, right? The plus means things that are going well, the positives, right? The pluses, and the deltas are actions, specific actions that you could take to make things to do more of, less of, or to start doing that you haven't done before, right? And these are specific things that you can do. So be very specific. You could also take the I like, the I wish, the I wonder approach. So have them tell you this is what I like, and this is what I wish you could do differently, better, less of, more of. And I wonder, it gives them the opportunity to say, well, I wonder if you did this way, or I wonder if you explore this other skill, what would that look like? So it gives them a more structured approach to, than just general feedback of things that are going well or not going well. So does that help?
Yeah, thank you, Marvin.
Okay. And I think with that, we're out of time. So thank you again for all your insights, your questions, the energy and the commitment to your success this summer. As we always say, just be you. Keep in mind all the things that brought you to this organization, to this company, to this lab. That's what they want, is that energy and that passion for what you do. Ask questions, be engaged, be committed, and the rest will follow. So thank you for your time. Thanks, Tiffany, for being my co-presenter. Thanks, Claire, for being a great host. And if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to come see us later.